everybody. It's the Cryptid Huntress. I'm Jessica Jones. Welcome into On the Hunt, where we are going on the hunt tonight with Mr. Todd Kmetz of the West Coast Dogman Project. You guys, this is going to be one spectacular show. But what show isn't spectacular over here on the Cryptid Huntress channel? I'm so glad each and every one of y'all are here tonight. Thank you for being here. Thanks to all my mods. I see you guys in the chat. And for all my channel members, you guys rock. Okay, everybody rocks tonight. So we have a fantastic program for you guys tonight. We're going to be talking about Dogman. Okay, a lot of Dogman talk. And I was just talking with Todd right before we went live, and I found out some interesting background on Todd that I did not know before. And we're going to get into that as soon as I bring him up tonight. Okay, so you guys, if you'd like to follow along with all of my shows, please go to my, oh, I was looking at, there's no sound. Can you guys hear me? I just want to make sure everybody can hear me. Okay. I just want you guys to, oh yeah, y'all go to my website. I'm sorry. If y'all can't hear me, let me know. Okay, thecryptidhuntress.com. That's my website. You can find all of my shows there, all the events that I'm going to be at. Thank you, Cryptiville. I appreciate you have my back there. Yes, I'm going to be at a few conferences, a couple of conferences, some get-togethers, some squatch outs coming up. So that's all listed there on my website. Okay, including, let's see, I've got a little flyer here. If y'all want to come see me down in Florida, I'm going to be at the Full Disclosure Now conference. I am going to be presenting. I actually present on Wednesday, so I hope you guys, if you come to that, even if you got a one-day pass, y'all come see me on Wednesday. I will be there, and you can also get online passes as well, where you can actually watch it being streamed live through the internet. Okay, so y'all can see it that way as well. This is a while of ways, okay, but I will be at the East Tennessee Squatch Out coming up in September 6th and 7th. That's with Manimal Research over in East Tennessee, where all the action goes down in Tennessee when it comes to Bigfoot and Dogman activity and all the other stuff too. Okay, and I'll also be at the Appalachian Starseed Reunion in August. And I can't remember what else. Oh, the World UFO Conference. That's next weekend here in North Georgia. So y'all come see me there too. Okay. All right, I'm busy. I'm a busy lady, okay? And I know y'all are busy too. But let's pull up our guest tonight because we have so much to talk about. And let's bring up Todd. Okay, so Todd Kmetz is a dogman enthusiast and researcher who co-hosts the West Coast Dogman Project's the Dogman Vortex podcast with our friend Shane Michael Crisp. They interview individuals who have had dogman sightings and encounters, authors and other researchers, and Todd is actually a former game warden, and he worked in the aerospace industry. And my goodness, please help me welcome to the show, Mr. Todd Kmetz. Hey, Todd.
Hey, Jessica, how you doing?
Hey, I'm so good tonight. Thank you for spending your Saturday with me this evening.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. It should be fun. Looking forward to it.
Well, of course, of course. Well, there's a lot to talk about, and something that really sparked my interest right before we went live. You mentioned that you were a game warden, and I actually love talking to game wardens and people who work in the woods and have some knowledge of the wildlife and the environments that I do research in. Mm-hmm. I think it makes a difference. Okay, and I was, of course, I'm going to ask you at some point tonight if you'd ever experienced anything odd in the woods while you were a game warden. But first, I'd love for you to tell the audience a little bit about yourself and like how you got into the Dogman phenomenon.
Yeah, good question. It's been a while. I think got to be probably listening to Vic's show a number of years ago, and also, of course, the late great Linda Godfrey. I read all of her stuff. I just happened to run across, a Dogman. Like, of course, as a kid, you love werewolves and all of the monsters and things like that. But, when you hear about a Dogman, like it immediately caught my attention because, I'm a pretty practical individual. So I'm trying to think to myself from there, is this compared to a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch? And people are seeing these things. I started to read the reports, and you start to think about the amount of people that are reporting, this phenomenon. And even as compared to a Sasquatch, there's much less reports, but it seems to be increasing and increasing in interest, and more people are getting involved with it. And so that kind of drew me to it. I would say probably about 5 years ago or so.
Oh, wow. Yeah, well, you live up in Washington State, correct?
I do. We just moved out here about 2 years ago from the East Coast. Yep.
Oh, wow. Okay, so
Yeah.
that Pacific Northwest is really known for Bigfoot and Sasquatch. Okay, and that's my background. I actually am a Bigfoot field researcher, and I had never really even heard of Dogman for a long time. I learned about it through the head of one of my research teams, Bob Grumpy. He was the head of the North Georgia Cryptid researchers and the Region 5 representative of the North American Dogman Project. So anything that I learned about Dogman came from Bob. And he was into it, and he told me, he's like, Jessica, they're real. They're real. And he and some of the guys on the team, they had found tracks that were potential Dogman tracks. And I'm still looking for Dogman, okay, because as a Bigfoot field researcher, I inadvertently find other stuff out there too, but your area is known mostly for Bigfoot. So had you ever encountered any kind of Bigfoot activity in your area?
Yeah, where I am here in Western Washington, I'm not very far away from the Olympics. And the Olympic Project is out here. They do a lot of Bigfoot research. Folks may be familiar with that project that's going on. Yeah, I've not done, I'm not a Bigfoot researcher. I mean, I've watched the shows, I've read some things about it. I'm somewhat familiar with, with the phenomenon. Patterson Gimlin film, everybody, has to watch that just to see what it's all about, to kind of get a read on it. And I was pretty stunned and fascinated, after I saw that footage of that. I think in the 1960s when that happened. But yeah, out here in the West, this is apparently, it's Sasquatch Central out here in Western Washington for sure.
Uh-oh. I think
Yeah, you're back.
I just portaled out of here. I'm back. I got zapped up by the ETs.
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, so I'm back. Okay, so lots of Bigfoot activity up there, but you guys do have some Dogman reports coming out of your area, but I know the West Coast is having a lot of Dogman activity. Have you heard any reports lately?
Yeah, I haven't had any reports lately. There was one out in Bremerton, which is on the peninsula, across the water from Puget Sound, across from Seattle. A woman ran into early in the morning, 2 or 3 in the morning, coming from a friend's house or going to a friend's house, ran into a bipedal canine in downtown Bremerton, which I believe is around 30 or 40,000 people. So it's right in downtown Bremerton that she ran into this thing. So we do have some reports out here, more in obviously in California, but and a few in Oregon. But you always have to think about, where there's a Sasquatch. It's the same environment that Dogmen seem to want to be around. Good food sources, water supplies, good cover, forested areas. Although, we always hear about the cave systems, and I'd like to probably talk about that. We should talk about that a little bit, because I need to get more familiar with that. Maybe you could help with that, Jessica, to kind of get me a little more familiar with the cave system back east. But why can't these two creatures, if they are flesh and blood, which I have a tendency to believe they are, versus the paranormal side, but that's just my take. You could try to be open-minded, obviously, but why can't they exist in the same environment? Because those environments are well suited to both of those creatures.
Oh yeah. Well, I've investigated one cave, and I am not a huge fan of caves, Todd. Okay, because caves can be quite scary, and you don't
Yeah.
know what's going to come at you from the other end. And of course, I let some of the guys I was with go ahead, and they are spelunkers and speleologists, I guess you call them. I mean, I don't think they identify as a speleologist. I can't say it. But they love caving. They're cavers, okay, and so it's always fun to let them go on ahead and squeeze through those little crooks and crannies and crevices while I stay at the back and make sure nothing comes in from the front. Okay, that's what I like to do, because cryptids do like to hide in caves. I do believe mines, caves, and I'm assuming you guys up in Washington probably have a lot of mountains, but there's going to be a lot of caves and old mines, I would think, right?
Yeah, like I said, I've only been out here for a couple of years, and I've been retired for a long time, so I don't get out as much as I'd like to. That's why, I kind of do the armchair research, and I like doing the podcast with Shane because we get the chance to interview, great people like yourself. You were on our show just a couple of weeks ago. I hope some people are checking it out and stuff, so that's great. But researchers and other podcasters and folks like that. That have more knowledge about this stuff than I do certainly as a field researcher. We'd love to talk with those folks. So yeah. But as far as caves go out here, like I started to say quickly, just I'm sure there are cave systems here. I have not had a chance to explore them. I am not a cave person. I did do a couple of cave expeditions many years ago in outside of Bozeman, Montana. I spent quite a bit of time out in southwestern Montana. I did do some caving out there, and it's a completely bizarre and different environment if you haven't done it.
Oh yeah, I want to say it's dangerous, so I don't recommend anybody go caving or going exploring old mines because it can be super dangerous. Only if you know what you're doing, okay? Especially if you're out there doing cryptid research. We generally stay away from the caves if we can, but occasionally we get a good cave investigation. This cave that I went to actually was a skinwalker cave. Okay, so yeah, that was weird. That was really wild. Very a little scarier than normal. Okay, but there have been Dogman sightings on the property as well, and Bigfoot. And a lot of times we get the same activity on some of these areas that we research or that we get called out to go investigate. There's not only if they have a Bigfoot sighting, sometimes they have Dogman sightings too. So I don't know what the deal is. If there's some people say, well, it could be a portal or it could be something there. But like you said, it could be the resources, the water, the animals to eat on and things like that. It could be that. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that it's environmentally connected. You go out, you're in Georgia, you go out, you're a field researcher, you see the type of environments that Sasquatch exists in, and you're out there also trying to check out and find Dogman as well. And I think it's if you're going to look for these things and you're going to find them, I think they're going to be in similar environments. And we've heard some researchers, talk about some interaction between Dogmen and Sasquatch. I haven't researched that heavily myself, but I have read a few different or looked at a few conversations about the interaction between these two creatures. So, with that being said, you could definitely think that they're living in the same environmental areas with similar needs and ways to survive.
Oh yeah, I'm starting to hear stories of Bigfoots and Dogmen like working together or working in tandem to do tasks. I don't even know. It's kind of like, well, I know that Bigfoots are real. Okay, and I'm sure that Dogmen are real, even though I've not seen one yet. Okay, but that is, I believe 100% with all the reports, with all of the eyewitness sightings, with people I know personally who have seen them, who have experienced them. But we hear about those sightings, and then we start hearing about them together and like working together. Have you gotten any reports of that? I'm sure you guys have interviewed people who have heard stories or have seen that.
Yeah, it's kind of far few and in between as far as reports that, and I know they're out there, and people have said that this stuff is happening. And on the other side of that coin as well, they also don't get along from what I've also read. So because they're interacting together, are they competing for the same food sources, the same, areas that they're in? Is there a competition between the two species if they are flesh and blood, like some say, and I believe? Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, I think working together. I have not heard not heard a lot of reports. There's just a couple that I've heard about with them actually working together. So yeah, that's another interesting piece of this whole phenomenon. If that's the case, what else are they capable of doing? It's just it's pretty interesting.
For sure. Now we have Robin. Hey, Robin. Robin's in the chat, and I don't know if Robin lives in Washington. I know you're on the West Coast, Robin. Okay, but she's asking, do you have any experiences around Vashon Island or Vashon? I don't know how to pronounce
Yeah,
that.
yeah, I haven't. Like I said, Robin, I've only been on here for a couple of years. I was working with an ADP for a while as a Washington rep. We were kind of in transition there, so I've kind of stepped back a little bit on that. But yeah, I'd have to look into that, and I'm familiar with the Vashon Island, but as I haven't personally had any experiences there, I haven't been out to the island as of yet. There's so many islands around this place; it's just insane. But yeah, I'll make a note of that and take a look and see if there's anything out there about that. Thanks for that
Oh,
question.
oh, that'd be awesome. That would be awesome. Yeah. I mean, I've heard stories of dogmen being on like deserted islands and stuff too. I mean, I don't know if you've gotten any reports of that. Like I mean, it's like we're not safe anywhere from these dogmen, are we? Can't even swim out to an island and be safe. They're there too.
Yeah, and well, why can't they be? I mean,
Right.
we get reports. We have a UK page, and Shane and I did. I think we did 5 interviews with individuals. Colin Kelty being one out in the UK, and there's reports from all over the world. So why can't they be, pretty much anywhere? I would, you always think of, the Michigan Dogman, or they're in Wisconsin, and the Wexford incident there back in what is it, 1887 or whatever it was there, when the lumberjacks came across those upright canines back in the 19th century. So you always kind of think of as of Wisconsin and Michigan as kind of being the hub, but and it's they're everywhere. I mean, just from the vast amount of reports that are coming in, and it's interesting that we're seeing them all over the place.
Yeah, it's like a resurgence or re-emergence of dogmen. Because you go back to look at the old newspaper clippings, and a lot of the newspaper clippings that I've come across involve giant skeletons,
Hmm.
wild men. Okay, like a Sasquatch, I guess, or like a Type 4 Sasquatch. Usually, it's wild men or hairy men. They say
Hmm.
from
Sure.
the 1800s, 1900s. You don't hear a whole lot of dogmen or werewolves, not here in the United States, at least for that time period. But dog-headed men go all the way back to for centuries. Okay, centuries ago, we had
Yeah.
dog-headed men on some of the old world maps, and in like St. Christopher and all sorts of historical records and artwork. But now there's like a resurgence, in my opinion. I mean, they've probably always been here, but what do you think? Do you think they've been here all along?
Yeah, I do. I think they've been here all along. If they're an unknown species, they've somehow been able to, like Sasquatch, have been able to reside in the shadows, keep a low profile, not interact with human beings. I think they're extremely intelligent. The reports, go back for obviously, till the 19th century. You started really seeing more of a research, of an interesting phenomenon taking place. But like you just said, Jessica, these, we've been looking at werewolves, what they perceive to be werewolves, or dog-headed men for thousands of years. And I think they do go back a long way. And I think they've just been kind of renamed, or maybe even misunderstood, as werewolves from a transformational standpoint. Some people do believe that that is possible. I won't say one way or another if that's possible. I mean, people that see dogmen first, the typical dogman sighting, being an upright canine with large teeth, snout, pointed ears, muscular build, 6 to 8 feet high, 300 to 500 pounds in some cases. What's the first thing that would come to your mind after kind of just after what you've just seen? You think back and say, God, I think it was like a werewolf. That's the first, like comparison that you can make, apparently, when you see one of these things. So yeah, I think they've been here for a long time, and I just think they're very capable, like Sasquatch, of keeping out of the way of human beings.
Yeah, I don't blame them one bit. Okay, I don't. Yeah. I wouldn't want to be around humans either if I were them at all. So
exactly.
And they're very elusive, not seen very often. This adaptive camouflage, no, there's all sorts of theories as to how they stay so hidden. But I think people are on their phones so much, it's easy to hide from humans, right?
Yeah, because they're always looking down, and
Yeah.
I've always said, when you're in the woods, not only if you're looking for, and I've all people ask me, like, where would you go look for a dog man? I said, well, one theory that I kind of had is, you may not find the dog man, but the dog man may find you, so that may be one of the things that, when you're out looking for these things, you may find one, or you may not find one, but he may find you. So you never know.
That's right. That's right. Oh, well, Adolf has a really good question. Okay, because you and I think you had mentioned the UFOs being sighted near Dogmen. Okay, sometimes. Sure. And Adolf has a good question. Has he heard of strange lights with encounters with dogmen? Have you, Todd?
Yeah, absolutely. There are reports out there that people have seen, and this goes kind of against the total flesh and blood, part of this phenomenon. And like I said, I'm open-minded. I listen to everybody's, comments and opinions on this. That's kind of how we're all going to figure this thing out. If we can be open-minded and put politics and all of the other things aside and think about what some of these reports are saying. And yes, there are reports out there of dogmen being seen just after a UFO encounter, or strange, anomalous lights in the sky. And one of the shows that we did with Eric Mintel, and he was out investigating the Bray Road beast on Lee Hempel's farm, which many of you guys and gals are certainly familiar with if you follow this phenomenon. Eric and his team did photograph strange lights in the sky that were definitely not aircraft. And just after that was when they heard the howls and they saw eye shine that was, a good 6 or 7 feet off the ground at the tree line. And we've also interviewed Nick Valente last year, and we talked a little bit about UAP, or they call UAPs. I call them UFOs. When I was 18 and I saw, I didn't see a UAP. I saw a UFO when I was 18 back in the 70s. So, whatever you want to call them. He says that a good percentage of reports that he's taken and investigated do have the UFO connection. And yeah, that intrigues the heck out of me because, like I said, I had a UFO experience when I was 18. And it's always intrigued the heck out of me for my entire life. And I've never been able to explain it. I still can't explain it to this day. And it's, I think luckily you know, I didn't see a dogman well, maybe unluckily, but some would say, but I didn't see a dogman when I did see that UFO. But yes, to answer your question, the best I can is yes, numerous reports are out there about the UFO dogman connection. And I think Sasquatch as well. People have also said that from what I understand. And Jessica, you could speak to that more than me.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. The first Bigfoot encounter I ever had, there was a UFO in the environment. Absolutely. And the guys on my team like to kind of joke around about how all roads lead back to ET when you're doing Bigfoot research. And I think that probably pertains to a lot of this cryptid research that people are doing, that we're all out here doing. Um, you never know what you're going to get. And we also have Shane Michael Crisp in the chat, I do believe. Hey, Shane. Thank you for being here tonight. So this
Hey,
is
Shane.
yeah, Todd and Shane have the West Coast Dogman Project, the Dogman Vortex podcast, y'all. So, and I got to be their guest a couple weeks ago. That was so fun. I really appreciated y'all having me on. We had
That
a
was
good
great.
conversation.
Yeah, we had a great time.
We did. We did. Well, okay, so getting to the Bigfoot and UFO topic, though, like I said, that was one of the first times I had Bigfoot activity out there with my research team. We had UFOs flying over our heads. Like we were sitting there watching UFOs as we were just having a lot of weird activity. And somebody in the chat had mentioned orbs. And I know that question kind of was pertaining to orbs potentially. We have a lot of orb activity too. Now, do you guys get reports of orbs and dogmen too?
Not out here on the West Coast that I'm aware of. You know, Shane and I have talked about this, you know, in off air, and I'm private about the UFO connection as well. And but not to my knowledge. There could be, but I'm not 100% sure. Maybe Shane could weigh in on that if he wants to put a comment in. It's something that he's heard, but I have not heard of any UAP, UFO sightings at the same time dogmen were seen out here on the West Coast, and that may not be true for Sasquatch sighting because there's there's so many of them out here, and I'm not familiar with those reports. Although because of the UFO dogman connection that I think it does exist, I may look at a little bit more in depth of the Sasquatch UFO connection out here, or just in general. I'd be interested in knowing, because you know, if there's interactions between these two species, whatever these things are, and there is UFO connections between the two, then you know that's another check in the box for research saying yes, there's a good chance that there is a UFO connection between with this phenomenon, which there appears to be some evidence of that for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, that's why it's important when people are taking reports down. You know, there's a particular Bigfoot group that is notorious for leaving out paranormal and supernatural aspects to Bigfoot sightings in their reports. Okay, and so it really upset a lot of people over the years when they're seeing a Bigfoot. They're giving a report to this organization, and the part where they said, well, there was an orb in the environment or there was a UFO that buzzed over my head, that part was left out of the report. And I think that it's important to keep those things in there because we need to look for patterns. Okay. And it's important that we don't leave anything out, in my opinion. So I think that's the same for the dogman too, dogman sightings. We need to know everything that's happening.
Yeah, because how could you exactly, Jessica, you know, and that's unfortunate that that happens. And it doesn't seem to happen as much in the dogman world, but maybe these folks who, and I can't speak for them, but just as a thought of how they may be thinking about this, is maybe they feel that the phenomenon is so strange to begin with, and when you add in the UFO element, it takes out some credibility to what they're trying to do. I disagree with that. I think that, you know, disclosure for UFOs is getting closer and closer all the time. I feel that you know, we're on the cutting edge of figuring out what these craft are, and if there is a connection between Sasquatch and Dogman with UFOs, we should honor those folks who have seen this and take those reports and write them down verbatim on what these folks have seen and what they experienced, one way or another, whether there was a UFO involved or not, so that we can move closer to try to come up with an answer to these strange phenomena between these two species.
Absolutely. Now, I have my good friend David Pardue in the chat tonight. David is a seasoned Bigfoot researcher out of North Carolina, and I'm on his team. We're on teams together, and we go out in the field a lot together. And he says, I'm seeing more UFO stuff now while looking for Bigfoot. Lots of reptilian critters showing up on camera. Okay, now I wanted to address this comment tonight from David because he's one of my teammates, and we go out there. We're looking for Bigfoot, but we're coming across other stuff. Okay, other stuff, including the UFOs. He's out there looking for Bigfoot and filming, and picked up some like little people on camera. Okay, all sorts of stuff. And so now we're getting reptilian-like creatures. I've actually had David on the show. He talked about the reptilian on a game cam in his backyard. It's just weird stuff is going on right now, Todd. A lot of strange cryptids are making themselves known and being seen. Why would you think? Do you have any kind of theory as to why we're getting more Dogman sightings right now and more other cryptid sightings?
Well, that's a $10,000 question within the $1 million question realm.
Right.
Yeah, that's very interesting. On you asked that. I'm not 100% sure why that is. If there's there's more people out there looking for these things. There's it depends on what time of the year it is. Obviously people go, well, geez, there's seems to be more sightings this time of the year versus that time of the year. Well, depends on how warm the weather is. More people are outside. They're seeing a lot more activity. They're out in the woods. They're out there camping and hiking and doing different things like that. So the reports would generally go up in the spring, summer, and early fall. But I'm not sure, 100% sure. That's a really interesting question, and which I haven't really delved into all that much, and I'll have to give that a little bit more thought on why we're seeing these things more. You're talking about like things that are outside of my scope, but if there is a UFO connection between Dogman and Sasquatch, and also other type of cryptids that are showing up that we are more unfamiliar with, like reptilians and things like that. Now people have talked about some aliens, creatures being reptilian and things like that. I can't really speak to that as much, but I certainly have heard those reports and people talking about that, and maybe that's the reason. I mean, you certainly are seeing, people see a lot of UFOs. They see a lot of this, they're looking up more, which is good. You just don't walk around with your head buried in the sand. Look up at the sky once in a while and see what might be up there. But yeah, maybe because maybe UFOs are interacting more with our environment, and these things have the connection. Maybe that's why we're seeing more of these creatures, whether it be Sasquatch, Dogman, or other type of cryptids that may have that UFO connection.
Hey, that's a good answer, Todd. I can dig it. I can dig it. Okay, Shane is saying in 2019 in Shaver Lake, California, there were 2 UFOs seen the same night of one Dogman or giant wolf crossing Deaky Creek Road at 2 a.m. He tries to research the area as often as he can. So there's a documented case of a UFO and a giant wolf or a Dogman sighting. So that's very interesting. Now I need to ask you too, from a game warden's point of view, Todd. Okay, you said you've never seen anything that looked like a Dogman. How often do you think that animals are misidentified, or Dogman could be misidentified as a bear or something else?
Yeah, excellent question. Yeah, well, my game warden background takes me back to the 90s and the early part of the 2000s. There were a lot of misidentifications, and I'm not talking about cryptids necessarily, but that could be the same thing. You could take misidentifications of people who are not used to seeing a particular animal in a particular area, because either they're not attuned to that particular area. They may be people from the city who have moved into rural areas and are not used to seeing these type of animals. And we did get misidentifications. We paid more attention, especially with mountain lions and things like that in southern New England, because aren't supposed to be any mountain lions in New England. So people said, well, I saw this big cat, and much bigger than a house cat. Could it have been a mountain lion? Sure, it's possible. You know, tell me what it looked like. Did it have this swooping tail? You know, do you know where it was? Are there tracks? Is there scat? Do you have a photograph? You know, what some of your background do you have? You know, have you been out in the woods? Are you a hunter? You know, so you ask a lot of questions to try to find out what they actually saw, and was it a misidentification? So many times it is. So I mean, in a generalization, if you took 100 people and they all saw a particular event, half of them would misidentify or misrepresent or misunderstand what they saw when they were asked about it at a later date. Half of the people would get it pretty close and pretty correct and knew what they saw. So if we're talking about Dogman and we're talking about Sasquatch, even if half of the people are wrong, half of the people are right, and they saw something that they could not identify, and they knew what it was, and they reported it, spoke about it, talked about it. So yeah. So misidentification, sure. Bears, you know, that of course that's the biggest one that pops out. Well, maybe it was a bear who was walking on its hind legs. Sure, bears can do that. Most of the time, black bears will do it to try to see what's above their viewings, area when they're quadrupedal. So they'll stand up, and they can walk short distances. They usually don't run on their back feet, their back legs, but they do stand up to see things. So, if you're completely, not familiar with what a bear looks like standing up, is that a possible misidentification of a Dogman or a Sasquatch? I suppose it could be, for sure.
Yeah. And especially a skinny bear or a mangy bear. A bear with mange looks really creepy. Okay, it doesn't look like a bear at all, really. Some of them don't, to me. So I can see there could be a lot of misidentification going on too, which leads us into another topic of not misidentified but unidentified animal attacks that have been going on over the past several years. We've had a lot of reports of unspecified animal attacks that were fatal. Many of them happen here in the South, by the way. Okay, a lot of them, Kentucky, Tennessee. I think I have one in Indiana or Illinois. I've got several reports here, even Missouri. Okay, of these attacks where people are assuming, especially the Dogman community, the cryptid community, is kind of we're wondering. Well, in North Carolina too, we got Miss Brenda Hamilton, that case. But a lot of people are kind of pointing the finger at Dogman, Todd, a potential Dogman attack, because some of these attacks are so brutal. And the culprits sometimes are blamed on packs of wild dogs. Okay, but you being a former game warden, how many times have you come across packs of wild dogs? And is that even possible? Or would it be possible?
Yeah, so back east, I've never heard of packs of wild dogs roaming the area. Do you have stray dogs that are out in the woods trying to survive? Can they be vicious? Can they be dangerous? Yes, they can. Any kind of an animal went backed into a corner, whether it's rabid, which usually rabies doesn't the gestation period isn't very long before the animal is deceased, usually less than a week. but I've never heard of any packing wild dogs in the Northeast. That doesn't say that that's not happening in larger areas that are much more rural than southern New England was. You know, Connecticut had a population of 3 million people in a state that, you know, is the size of a postage stamp. So, you know, we did have a lot of woods and a lot of wooded areas, don't get me wrong, but you know, wild dogs, we didn't have that issue that I was aware of. And of course, game, you know, and conservation officers don't normally get involved with domestic animals. That's for animal control within the townships back east in Connecticut, at least, that got involved with dogs and dog attacks and things like that. Although, you know, we did hear about it and we're privy to the information as well. But large roving gangs of dogs, let's call them, you know, no, not that I was aware of.
I know it never sat right with me hearing that it was packs of wild dogs, like the case in I think it was Tennessee, East Tennessee, with Amber Miller and Tony Aarons. They both passed away. They were brutally mauled, fatally mauled, both of them, by packs of wild dogs. And I know those were given to me as like remote viewing targets. And I saw something that was, when I was remote viewing, this was a blind target, and I saw just one gigantic, just savage animal like ripping them. You know, it was really bad. So I didn't buy the story that they were packs of wild dogs for that one, for those two.
Sure.
But nonetheless, you know, we also have things like big cats. Okay, and I'm not putting you on the spot here, okay, as a game warden, but you know, here in Georgia, we're told that there are no like black panthers and stuff. Yet people are picking them up on their game cams and things, right? Like big cats and stuff. And so sometimes there are cats that are rogue, that are running around, that aren't identified by the government, okay, or any kind of WMA or wildlife agency or anything like that, for whatever reason, okay. But we do have big cats too, and I think a lot of these people who are getting fatally mauled could be getting attacked by big cats.
Absolutely, and happens in California quite often. Well, not quite often, but it does happen. You know, and of course, you know, big cats being mountain lions. You know, they're extremely, you know, they can be extremely dangerous, extremely aggressive. You know, they seem to attack people on bicycles because they perceive them as prey because they're running away. They're driving a bicycle away from them. So they're normally, big cats are a pursuit animal. So they're looking to run down their prey. That's how they hunt. And whether it's a person or another animal, yeah, sometimes it doesn't make any difference to them, especially joggers. Joggers and runners have been attacked by mountain lions in the past, and it does happen on occasion. And it's unfortunate, but many of the people were killed. And one thing with a mountain lion, unlike you know, a grizzly where you don't want to fight back, you know, you want to try to play dead. Hopefully you never get into that situation, but with a mountain lion, you want to fight back with everything you've got. And a lot of times the cat will back off because you're too difficult to take down. You're too big. You're causing too much of a problem, and they don't want to get injured, obviously. So they'll move on to something else that's easier. But many people don't. They roll over, and you know, their attacks are sometimes fatal. So yeah, mountain lions. And many states do have them. They roam. Their range is huge, depending on food source, time of the year, litters, and environmental factors and things like that. So, yeah, mountain lions definitely can be a problem with some of these attacks.
Yes, and they sometimes they'll jump down from a tree too onto their prey, from what I've learned, and they go for the head and they go for the neck. Okay, and it's pretty brutal. I'm a proponent. I am an advocate of carrying a weapon at all times. That's just me, though. As long as you're trained in whatever weapon that is, okay. I highly recommend that from a personal standpoint. That's what I do. Okay, but sometimes you may not have time to grab a weapon. if something pounces on you from the air. Now, as a field researcher, we're taught to always look up. Okay, so we're looking down for the tracks. We're also looking up into the trees. Not only for like Bigfoots and Dogmen, but we're looking for big cats too, because they're silent and they're deadly. Okay,
Absolutely.
so you never see them.
Yep. And like you said, you know, you don't have much time to react, especially if it's coming down from a tree and they are high ground hunters. They want to have a view of their prey from above. It gives them a much better vantage and an opportunity to want to take that prey down, to run them down. So yeah, certainly, you know, it does happen. And you're right, you know, some of these attacks, you know, there was the one with that, the young boy there in Kentucky, that was dragged by some unknown creature into the woods. You know, mountain lions will do that. They will drag their prey for sure into better locations. Some of them will drag their prey back up into a tree for a safe location. But
trying to find it.
yeah.
Well, I thought I had the I must not have uploaded that one. But these are just some of the headlines of some of the people who were attacked. I had the headlines. I had the news article for that little boy. He was 13 years old, and he was dragged up the side of a hill or side of a mountain. And I didn't look into the details. That's one of the cases that I have not thoroughly looked into because it's a child. And I see what I do with the remote viewing when people give me targets, and I'm very hesitant to put some of that information out there if I were to remote view something like that, because it is a kid, okay, and the family is still here, and that's just out of respect for the family. And of course, and I've always been hesitant to do these remote viewing targets and then put it out publicly. But in the case of like this lady here, Miss Brenda Hamilton, she was out of North Carolina, I believe, and this happened in 2019, 2018, 2019. And her family was still looking for answers as to what happened to her. I believe her head was crushed, or her neck. So it was a head injury, I think. But she was walking her dogs, I think, or just walking, and some dogs had met up with her, I think, right? And she was found in a drainage ditch.
Right. And the two suspect, apparently, along with that part of that story is apparently the two suspect dogs that sheriff's department had quarantined for 10 days or 7 days were not aggressive at all. There was some DNA, I don't know if it was mitochondrial DNA, found on her shoe that was linked to a possibility of one of these dogs that they had in quarantine. But law enforcement said, man, these dogs just don't seem to fit the MO of attacking this poor unfortunate woman who had apparently a lot of wounds, a lot of bite marks on her. She was found in water. The two suspect dogs were taken into custody soon after that, and they didn't have blood on them. They weren't wet. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting bits and pieces that are missing with this case, along with numerous other cases. It seems like for that have been blamed on wild packs of dogs, or or other unknown canines. So who knows? It's really unfortunate that these type of things happen and we don't get the full story as the general public.
That's right. That's right. And I think from a tracker standpoint, I know you worked as a game warden, animal tracks, I know animal tracks, I know human tracks, I know Bigfoot tracks. Okay. I know all sorts of different tracks. But it's perplexing to think that they didn't have trackers out there immediately figuring out what got her, where it came from, where it went. It just, I felt like there was a lot of stuff that was being kept from the general public for whatever reason on that case. But Digger Dog has a question for you, Todd. On being a game warden, do you know of any deaths attributed to normal animals, but you knew that it wasn't?
Yeah, I don't, not from my limited area up in Connecticut. Like I said, I was part-time. I was a full-time engineer working in the aerospace industry for United Technologies. So this was something, being a game warden was something I was always interested in, and I was lucky enough to be able to get involved with it and things like that. But no, I did see in a pretty remote area in eastern Connecticut, in the Nipmuc State Forest, I did see some interesting tracks near one of the lakes off of in the state forest that kind of caught my attention. Um, I talked to one of the biologists about it. He thought that they were a bear track, but and it just didn't look like that to me. It didn't have the five claws. It was, of course, the track was somewhat old. It looked, it looked like an oblong canine track to me, and it was a few of them. I did have my 35 millimeter camera. This is going back before digital cameras were ever invented, and I didn't think that much of it. It wasn't anything as part of an investigation that I had to do, or any part of my normal duties. So I didn't take any pictures of them, but I thought they were kind of odd. But no, as far as attacks by animals um, on individuals, that was pretty rare to find in Connecticut, at least during the time that I was there.
Wow. Tree Madness has an interesting comment. Stick a GoPro on your back and watch what you catch in the wild stalking you. Yeah, that's what I think Harley's been doing that. Harley Owens has been sticking cameras on his back. And is it Scott Carpenter? I guess he did the same. And you actually get some pretty good results out of that because they don't think you're looking at them. Okay. And they like to peek out behind trees and stuff when you're walking through the woods at night, during the day too, apparently, which I find interesting. But wow, okay. Have you ever come across, when you were out in the woods, and anytime you've been out in the woods, you ever come across any three-toed prints? Those are always perplexing to me. Some of those.
Yeah, they are. To my recollection, no. I mean, I've come across four-toed prints without claws, which indicates, possibility of some sort of a cat of some sort, because usually you see canines have their toes are out, or bears their claws are out, things like that. But we don't know for sure if a dog man really is canine. Maybe it's something else that's not. Maybe it's not a canine. It just has the appearance of being canine. Maybe it's not at all. We don't know for sure.
Well, I've got the chart up right now for everybody to see. In case, I know most of my audience is very familiar with Dogman because we talk about it pretty often. But for anyone who's not familiar, these are the main categories of some of the Dogman classifications. And as you guys can see, the type 2 variant down there at the bottom, that looks like a hyena. Okay, and hyenas are not even dogs, Todd, I don't believe. Okay,
correct.
so,
They're not. That is correct.
Some of them even look gorilla-like or ape-like, like a Sasquatch. Like the type, I think it's a type 3 Sasquatch is like the Gugway or the Genoskwa, and those look like they have a long muzzle on them. So lots of different types. It's really hard for some people to wrap their minds around there being a dogman or a werewolf, but then we've got different categories of them. It's amazing.
It really is, and that's the other thing. When you talk to 5 people and you give 5 different descriptions, even within a short amount of time of a particular person or object or something like that. So, so it's a very strange thing on how people perceive what they see, especially. I mean, if it was me and I saw a 7-foot creature in the woods that comes up upon me, or even if, because we kind of differentiate between a sighting and an encounter. A sighting is, to me, it's fleeting. It ran across the road. I saw it for a few seconds. It was vertical. It was big. It was dark. It had pointy ears. Okay, a sighting. Luckily to be able to see that. But an encounter, that's something up close, possibly personal, so you can get a pretty good idea of what you're looking at. But the mind can play kind of funny tricks on you If you're terrified, you go in, you know, you have tunnel vision and things like that. You don't pick up on certain things. You don't remember certain things. If it was a traumatic experience, things are forgotten. Sometimes they come back, sometimes they don't. So, you know, it depends on how much duress the person's in, how frightened they were at the time of this encounter. But, you know, if I encountered one of these things myself, you know, people say, well, how come we don't have any pictures of them? Or why don't we, you know, people have got cell phones all over the place. Or, you know, if you came across a 7-foot dog man in the middle of the night in the woods, what's the first thing you're going to try to do? Is try to get out of the situation. And probably the last thing you're thinking about is taking out your cell phone, especially if you're not investigating these things, you know, all the time and you're ready for it. So, yeah, I think misidentification, you know, we keep coming back to that, but I think it's a valid point. And a lot of people see different things in different ways. And, you know, so we get all that. So I think that's why we have a lot of different uh, uh, kind of descriptions of these things. And maybe they're not all the same. We don't know for sure about really anything with this phenomenon. So we have to keep an open mind and try to dig through some of these reports to try to get, you know, the similarities. And that's what I always look for is, and I'm sure you do too, Jessica. You know, when you get reports and you want to see similarities, you want to see, you know, patterns that are happening, and those become more credible as you start to investigate these things. And, you know, that's why I love to read Linda Godfrey's books. There's so many reports that she took from various people in those areas that, you know, many of the things that they saw were very similar. Many things were not similar. So what are the, you know, what are the differences between these creatures? And, you know, what are the similarities? What are the differences? And I think that's why they came up with the different variants, because people are seeing different things, at least in their own mind, at the particular time of the encounter or the sighting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we have several people in the chat tonight who I've had on my shows, people that I know personally, people who are going to be on my show, who have had personal dogman encounters. And so
Awesome.
through their stories and through people like Vic Kiff, who I had on my show this past Wednesday,
Mhm.
you know, I was asking him about patterns. You know, what are some of the commonalities and the similarities with all of these reports? Because he's taken thousands of reports. Okay, I mean, I haven't taken that many. I've taken several. Okay, but and we've heard a lot on my shows. Okay, but he's taken literally thousands of reports, and people call him and leave messages all the time. And my question was, well, are they always violent? You know, because we hear all these stories. If you go to any kind of, you know, podcasting platforms, or you just type in dogman on YouTube or on the internet, it's like dogman attacks, you know. But really, when he said, and what I've discovered is that a lot of the encounters are not violent at all.
Sure.
They're not even, they're threatening in the sense that they look scary, but they don't charge at people very often. Is that the case with your experience?
I think so. I think most of the reports are non-violent. You know, we have had a few reports, you know, over the years where there have been some violent, you know, tendencies for these creatures. It almost seems like they, you know, and we've heard this before, where they get a kick out of scaring the crap out of us. They seem to have an intelligence about them. They seem to have a way that they look at people who are seeing them, and they seem to want to intimidate us. Those stories have come out quite often, and you know, if this is the way that these things operate, then apparently they don't really have to attack us unless they're threatened. It's like in, you know, many other animals are not. You know, if you back him into a corner, you know, even a raccoon will come out and attack you. If he's scared and he's backed into a corner, he will be a very vicious a little animal. So a dog man could be the same thing, but they seem to have an intelligence about them. Most people, I think, that have up close and personal contact with these things, don't walk away with feeling good about it. I think they felt intimidated, they felt threatened, they felt like their life was in danger, like these things could end their life in a heartbeat if they wanted to. And it almost seems like sometimes the creature itself knows that it is intimidating us, and it almost seems to like doing it from some reports that we read. So
I know it's kind of savage, it's like a cat playing with a mouse, basically. It's like,
mhm.
well, I could eat you, or I could just play with you, or I could
Yeah,
play with you before I eat you.
yeah,
you know,
exactly.
which is it's pretty sinister actually, but a lot of times, most of the time, they're just letting you know that they can. And the
Hmm.
smile, man, I think I
Yeah.
mentioned that Vic and I talked about that this week, is the Dogman smile
Hmm.
sometimes, don't you? And sometimes dogs smile, they don't actually smile, but they just show their teeth
Yeah.
and it looks like they're smiling. Okay, but
Exactly.
still, that's really scary. I mean, I would be beside myself if I was in the woods, especially if I was by myself
Hmm.
and came across a smiling dog man. Just saying.
Yeah, and when we've heard these, like you said, we've heard these reports where they lift up that upper lip, expose the canine teeth, which some people say there's too many of the teeth for the mouth itself. Some people say, God, they look like they were self-sharpening, So those are interesting details in reports that you have to look at and kind of take and say, well, what is that? Is there something else to it? But just like you were talking about the smiling dog man, where they take that upper lip, they pull it up, let you know that they have large teeth. They're 300 or 400 pounds, and if they wanted to, they could do some damage to you. And it almost seems like they know they could. And they seem to like the intimidation in many cases, in many reports that we've heard of, for sure. So that's an interesting tidbit.
Well, maybe they don't want to hurt anybody.
Right.
Maybe they don't want to. And I like to
Mhm.
tell people when we're talking about Bigfoots, for instance, and it's probably the same for a lot of cryptids. They're like humans. Sometimes you're going to have one that's having a bad day, and it wants to bite your head off. Okay, just like humans. There's some that will eat you. Okay, but there's also some that are very motherly and parental and like grandmotherly and want to take care of you and feed you, and make sure you're okay and you're safe. I mean, we even hear sometimes about kids getting lost in the woods and being protected by bears,
Mhm.
which I believe a lot of times those could have been Sasquatch, Bigfoot,
Mhm.
taking care of the children out there that were
Sure.
lost. Okay, so I think that dogmen could be the same. They could be like humans as well. They have different personality types and stuff. So I don't think they're all bad. Okay, that's where I'm
Yeah,
going with it. They're not
I
they're
agree.
not all violent. They're
I
not all.
agree. I agree with that. I think that if they were, and the people who were making the reports, you probably wouldn't have heard the reports because they wouldn't be around to make them. And maybe that is true. Maybe there are some that people, that had seen these things and encountered these things, never lived to make the report. I mean, that's entirely possible as well. But I think it's far few and in between. I think you're right. I think that they don't want to interact with us, and they don't seem to want to hurt us in any particular violent way. But I also think, based on reports, that they do want to intimidate us and let us know that they are an apex predator, as many people call them, and they could do whatever they want, when they want, and how long they want to us. So I think they like that. If that's the case, I think they might like that a little bit too. So, who
Oh
knows?
yeah. Oh yeah. And I've even heard. Speaking of marking my territory, Trey's got an interesting comment there. It's funny. Uh, I can't remember if it's Al Santoriga or Brian Bowden. Okay, it may have been Brian, but they have an interesting encounter story. I think it may be Al. I can't remember. I'm so sorry, Al and Brian. Okay, but one of them has a story about a dogman actually coming to their house and urinating on the side of their house. Okay, and
Mm,
maybe their fence and the side of their house, and they said it smelled really bad, and it was marking its territory basically. I guess. And I mean, I know humans do the same. My dad used to on the side of the house, okay, sometimes. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know it's terrible. Don't be mad, Dad. I just totally, most guys do that, I guess. Okay, but but anyways, dogmen do it too. Dogs do it. All the animals do it. Okay, they mark their territory, and I think that's something that dogmen do, according to what either Al or Brian had talked about before with me. So yeah, dog-like mannerisms and human-like mannerisms in that one, I guess. Okay.
Yeah, kind of a
But,
little mix between the two species there for sure. It's interesting. But yeah,
well,
why wouldn't they if they were animals, you know?
Yeah, well that brings me to a thought, I guess, or a question. You know, some people say that dogmen are half dog, half man. Do you think that that's the case, or are they their own species?
Yeah, that's the $20,000 question in the $1 million row of questions. Yeah, I don't. I think the only reason why Linda called them the indigenous dogman was because they resembled a upright canine. They also walk like a person. So they were standing on two legs, whether digigrade or bent back knees or however you want to describe that. So I think that that's the way they're portrayed because that's the way people see them and perceive them. Do I think that there's any cross between the two? No, I don't. And people, there are certain part of the population of people, and I think it's a small population within the dogman community that believe these things are most are part man, part dog, and that's not to say that with the native connection with the Wendigo or the Skinwalker from Navajo, the Navajo people, where they can shapeshift and do things through through magic and things like that, which I am not very familiar with. We did have William Nighthawk on our show, and he did speak to that. It was super interesting stuff, and it was one of my favorite episodes that Shane and I did was with William. And anytime we can get the native perspective on that is, I really want to do more of that, and I wish that we could get more native First Peoples to discuss some of these things. And I know they keep it close to the vest, and I understand that. But we would really like to have people come out from the native community and talk about some of this stuff because it will help us to understand, if there's crosstalk between dogman and the native culture. And certainly Linda Godfrey believed that. I was supposed to get, but unfortunately she passed away before I got the overlay map. She was going to send me, she talks about it. I don't know if it's Hunting the American Werewolf or I can't remember which one of the books it was. And it could have been a couple of them, where she talks about the native mound and the effigy mound connection and dogman sightings. And it's certainly the Shackleman case from what it was 1936 in southeastern Wisconsin, with the night watchman sees this dog-like creature digging on one of the effigy mounds, and it's almost speaking in some sort of a bizarre language to him as he recalled it from, his son was talking about it and telling the tale about what his father saw. So there are, that native connection, and we'd certainly love to hear more about that. But yeah, I digress to that. But
yeah, well, William Nighthawk is a good friend of mine, and he is one of the few people that does talk about the history of the indigenous connection with dogmen and the Native Americans. Okay, and he did bring up at one point. He did say that the reason that there are so many dogmen sighted at cemeteries and at the Indian burial mounds, okay, because we have burial mounds here where I live. The Etowah Indian mounds are not far from my home, and we have several here in North Georgia and Middle Georgia. And He said it's because the land has been either blessed or cursed by a medicine man or a medicine woman
Sure.
at some point to protect the land and to protect the burial sites. Okay, and they're brought in to protect that land at all cost. Okay, so that means scaring people away. Okay, potentially it could mean hurting people if they don't go. You know, I don't know, but I think there's a lot more to learn with all of that, and hopefully people like William will come forward and talk about it a little more so that we can have a better understanding of what we're dealing with out there and the history behind it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Native connection is definitely understudied, and we hope that more First Peoples will come out about some of their experiences and what some of these creatures could be, and how they understand them within their culture.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, Todd, this has been a fantastic conversation tonight. I have really enjoyed talking to you tonight for sure. And I hope you'll come back and join me again soon. And I know you and Shane, thank you. You and Shane have taken a little hiatus for the summer with your podcast, but I would love for my audience to hear about your podcast and where they can find it so they can go back and watch the shows y'all have already done on there. If you wouldn't mind telling the audience.
Yeah, West Coast Dogman podcast, the Vortex podcast. You'll find it on YouTube. Just search on West Coast Dogman Vortex podcast. You'll see them all up there with some of the guests that we've had, Jessica being one of them, and Vic and William Nighthawk, and the list goes on. And we've had researchers, we've had authors, we did a UK series with folks out across the pond. We've had, like I say, authors and researchers and other podcasters, and so that we try to bring in a varied group of people to talk with us and try to figure out what this is. And as we always say, the truth is out there, and the more we talk about it, and the more people that are out there researching this thing, and the more people that come forward with their encounters and sightings, the closer we'll be to figuring out what this phenomenon is. And with people like you, Jessica, out there in the field, researching both Dogman and Sasquatch, this is what it's going to take in order to figure out what we're dealing with here. So awesome.
Oh, thank you. Hey, and you know what? I am actually going on I don't want to say a dogman hunt because that sounds bad, but I'm going to say a dogman expedition with about, there's 5 of us going. We're going to be, I can't give the location away, but we're going to be deep, deep, deep in the woods where there have been some dogman sightings, and we're spending an extended period of time out there in the middle of nowhere. And I can't give details, but let me tell you, I'm not sure what I got myself into with this one. Okay, I'm not. But if you make it back, I will. I'll make it back, and we'll talk. Do you have any advice for me before I head out and do that?
Well, people ask, where can I go find a dogman? I think Dogman will find you if he wants, if he or she wants to. But you guys are out there investigating this stuff, and that's the only way. Like I said, we're going to figure out what this is to keep doing it, keep looking, keep your eyes open, keep your eyes up. Because we have heard reports that these things do and are in trees, which leads you to believe, are they really canine? If they are, how are they climbing a tree? But we've heard reports that they are in trees. So keep your eyes open. And yes, certainly be careful out there, and stay in your groups. Watch your flank, as they say, watch your 6. Make sure that you've got good circular visibility and in the areas that you're in. So you guys are experienced. You're out there with experienced people. So
yes, I am not. I am not volunteering to be dogman bait. Okay, so if anybody's wondering, no, we're all dogman bait. Okay, the whole group is going to be dogman bait. Okay, I'm not going to go out by myself. I will not do anything stupid other than being out there. Okay, that's not very smart. But hey, you know what? If it takes things like this, like to get out there and do the real boots on the ground research for an extended period of time out in the middle of nowhere, where there are Dogman sightings. That's what we're going to do. Okay, that we're going to do it. And hopefully we'll come back with some good stories. Okay, and I think that there are Bigfoots out there in that same area. Families of Bigfoots have been spotted. So we'll see what happens. But nonetheless, this has been fantastic. Todd, thank you so much for being here. And thank you to Shane, Michael, Chris for also being in the chat tonight here with the West Coast Dogman Project. Okay, you guys are the best and very knowledgeable. And I am just tickled that I found out you were a game warden too. So,
well, I don't know how much it adds to the whole thing, but it lends to thinking about spending time in the woods and what somebody what people are seeing out there. And sometimes it is misidentification, but sometimes it's not.
Yeah, it is. Well, everybody stay tuned, and y'all please go subscribe to the West Coast Dogman Project on YouTube. And you guys will be back after the summer, right? After the summer, you'll be putting out more shows, but they've got a whole lineup of shows you guys can go watch right now. Okay, and please go do that and give them a subscribe. Okay, and you guys, thank you so much for being here. I am truly grateful for each and every one of y'all. Please come back and see me tomorrow night. I'll be at Spaced Out Radio. I'll be there. I think I'm having Brian Singh, my good buddy, will be my guest tomorrow night over there at Spaced Out Radio at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific, 9 Central. Y'all come see me over there. Otherwise, y'all have a wonderful night. Todd, thanks again for being here. I've really enjoyed having you here as my guest tonight. And good luck with your move coming up too. Okay.
Thanks so much.
Awesome.
Take care.
Okay, everybody, y'all have a great night, and we will see you guys. I'll see y'all back tomorrow night. Bye, y'all. Stay safe out there.